But without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Travis Walker, and he's going to start the presentation for you.
Thank you. Is this thing on? Did I do that correctly? Can you hear me in the back? I think it is on. Look at that. My voice is reverberating. Okay, I don't shame, I don't blame, I don't screech, I don't preach. I give information. I inform, and you take that information and do with it what you will. As John and Courtney mentioned, my name is Travis Walker. I'm the Business Solutions and Diversity Consultant at Allianz Life Insurance Company of North America. So today we're going to talk about engaging the next generation, and we're going to concentrate on the verb. It is the engaging part, right? I'll give you some information on it, and you'll have some numbers and stats, but it really is, how do we talk to these people? And maybe more importantly, why do we talk to these people? Why is it important now? If you look, it will say level 2, but treat this like a rerun on television. If you haven't seen it, it's a new episode to you. And if you didn't see part 1, and I don't think you have, you're not missing anything. There's a little bit different information, but really it comes down to engaging, why we should engage, how we should engage, and who these people are. So let's get into it. These are going to be our learning objectives. How to most effectively communicate with and attract the prospects. I use Cologne, but if you're doing that online, it won't work. These are digital natives. You're going to have to try other tricks. Understanding their tech needs, wants, and available services, and then how to deepen your relationship with the next generation of investors. Real quick question. I see some people in here with kind of taut skin and darker hair. Are there any millennials in this room that are advisors at all? Anyone? Look at this guy. All right, another one. Got it. I saw the full heads of hair and I was like, yeah, they're probably. All right, so the thing is, like, sometimes we write these young people off, but I hope to demonstrate why we shouldn't and why it's important. In fact, we have people in the room, again, that are literally doing the job, so why would we ignore the people that want to get in? Gen Z, right? So when I first saw that stat, it was like 1997. I graduated high school before that. And then I had a moment where I was like, my God, I graduated high school before that, right? So they are really young, but I can tell you that their mindset and what they're thinking about and how they're trying to set up things for the future is already beginning. Moreover, they are the most ethically and racially diverse cohort in America. Now, people always say, like, well, why does that matter? What does that matter for? Is that a big deal? Well, yeah, because if you're approaching these people, if you're talking to these people, you want to know what's important to them. I found myself at a financial planning association, the FBA Knowledge Circle, and there was a young man sitting at the table. Just graduated college, finance. He was getting ready to tackle this industry and catch it by the tail. But he's not giving me his full undivided attention, and he's looking down at his phone a little bit, and I almost went in like full boomer mode. I started like shaking my jowls, and I'm not even a boomer, and I was like, well, what's he doing? Why is he looking at his phone? He finally peeks up and goes, oh, yeah, go ahead. And I was like, oh, well, what's up? What's that about? He said, no, I was just checking you out online. I wanted to make sure that whatever words are coming out of your face right now are matching with how you show up in the space. So what is it that you do? How do you show up? Is your bio, does that look like legit? And I said, oh, okay, well, did I pass? He was like, yeah, you're good. Please continue. Like, all right. He goes, but your company needs work. I was like, all right, guy, geez, thanks for the advice, unsolicited, by the way. But it did tell me that that is something that's important to him, and I just couldn't, write him off. The millennials, 2 of which are in our audience, they're born between 81, right, and 96, and they're the largest generation after the boomers. Pretty big group there. Now, the thing with the millennials, for so long, they caught so much flack for just, like, being young, and people would call them, like, kidiots, and I'm like, that's a hybrid of a kid and an idiot. And I'm like, why? Why are they getting so much grief? And I thought millennials are so young, and then I'm looking at the numbers and thinking, they're actually a little bit older than we think. A few years ago, there was a coach at Oklahoma State. Some of you might know where I'm going with this, but he was having a post-game conference, a press conference, and one of his players had a bad game, and the media was a little tough on the player, beating him up a little bit. And the coach, in defense of his player, said, don't attack him, come after me. I'm a man, I'm 40. And I was like, wow, okay. So 40, folks, makes you a man or a woman. At least it makes you an adult. But then and there I knew, like, okay, he's a man, he's 40, and he had all the responsibility in the world, and he's overseeing this huge program. So I think, 40 is not really that young in terms of your career and your aspirations and what you're building towards. Someone said, Justin Timberlake, Tennessee's own, he's a millennial. And I said, JT? And I saw him dance recently. I was like, oh yeah, no, he's definitely in his 40s now. So let's talk about their entrepreneurial spirit, right? 53% of them, 50% of millennials earn income on the side. Now, you may look at that and say, well, heck, they have to. They have to do something to supplement the income. Yeah, some of it is that, for sure. It's a tough economy for some people. But the other part of it, I'll tell you, is that they have hopes and dreams that they want to build towards, and they want to maximize the hours in their day and how they can do that, what they can do to earn a little bit more. I was in New York, I hop in the back of an Uber, a guy said, oh, I had a full-time job, but this is what I do, man, and this is my play money. I take this and I invest and I build for the future. And then he told me his car note, and I was like, man, you better try do some more trips. This is gonna be a long haul for you, buddy. But they do have that entrepreneurial spirit. I don't think that they're simply looking at 9 to 5 and saying, I'm gonna go have a job. It's like, what else can I do to build? Financial professionals who acquire and retain younger women clients could see up to 4 times amount of growth. Now, I also do a divorce presentation, right? It's the adult conversation that we need to have. And there's a part of that where they say we dive into alimony payments. And alimony payments, believe it or not, are pretty rare. They only account for like 10%, and that number's falling. But the number's falling because now women are having to pay some alimony. They're like, we don't like that deal. We think it's really silly. So now you don't want to do it, but that's because they're earning more money. They're CEOs. They run companies. They have big jobs, right? And so when you have these younger women, they're coming up in the world, right? You look at their hopes and dreams, there are people that want to get in on it too, okay? And so I know that I've been at Allianz. Next year will be my 18th season. They're bringing me back for another one. And I have, people that I've started in the company with that are now directors and managers and, executives, and they're like, okay. And I can tell you that their dreams are wrapped around how do I build for the future? And they're very keen on all this stuff. So if you're of the mindset, well, I don't know how to approach them, I don't know how to talk to them, maybe change that, because I can say that they're getting assets, they're gaining assets, and it's pretty serious. They're also savers. Okay, so I have a younger sister. She is a maniacal saver. Around about 2007, she gives me a call and says, hey, pack your bags, we're going to Italy. And I was thinking, like, are we on the run? What happened? Let's cooperate. Let's get the story straight. What's happening? She says, no, we're just going to go to Italy. Now, I got to tell you, it's a little rare because I grew up a screw-up. We come from South Central LA, proud graduates of Crenshaw High School. Yes, that Crenshaw High School. So when my kid sister says, we're going to Italy, I'm like, did I miss something? Did you come into an inheritance, an uncle I didn't know? She said, no, I'm working in the banking industry. I'm writing loans. I work for a company called Countrywide, and things are going pretty well. So we get to Italy, and yeah, I know. I hear the groans. You're going to groan even louder later. But she's like half of Italy. And I'm like, well, if you got it, I'll take another one of those silk scarves. So now we're in Italy having the time of our lives. We get back. 2008, I don't have to tell you what happens. It all comes crashing down. And my sister did all she could to hang on to the house that she purchased. She was able to keep her house. But she learned a lesson that day, and it really kind of strengthened her resolve and how she's going to move forward. She became a maniacal saver. And from time to time, I'd talk to her and say, well, babe, having your money sit on the sideline is probably not the best approach. What else you thinking? But she was like, it's like that cat that jumped on a hot stove. I got burned once. I'm never going to jump on a hot stove again. Problem is, you might not jump on a cold one either. So she was really pensive, but that changed for her a little bit. The other thing, and John alluded to this earlier, $72.6 trillion assets that are going to go from the boomers to the millennials. So a tale of two cities. I grew up in LA. I now live in Minnesota. I have a friend that's in LA. Her uncle bought a modest house in Inglewood, California. Well, something happened in Inglewood in the last few years. Football came back to Los Angeles. They built a stadium. They built a basketball arena for the Clippers. I don't know why. Maybe they think they'll be good here at some point in the near future. They built casinos. They built racetracks, all these things. And that property value from that little modest house she had, she just sold that thing for $1.3 million. Her uncle dies, leaves it to her. She had no interest in moving down to Inglewood. She didn't say, suddenly I'm a homeowner. She said, how much is this thing worth? And when he bought it, a couple $100,000. Now, she's a millionaire overnight, asking, well, do you know anybody? Can you put me with anybody? And she eventually found someone, right? I live in Minnesota on Summit Avenue in St. Paul. It's the best place to take walks. There's these wide sidewalks. They have these old style lantern street lamps for the street lights. All these Victorian homes that are built with like these carports that were used to house like carriages, and like the fall foliage, you can't beat it. But lately on these walks, I've been seeing a bunch of for sale signs on the lawns. And I'm thinking, who would sell this home? The kids. They don't want that spooky Scooby-Doo haunted mansion. They don't care about it. They would sell the asset, take off, take their money. They're not trying to have 9 kids named Willington, Whitney, Wellington, and Weatherby. They're done. They maybe have 2. They're going to go move to the city. They're taking the inheritance, right? And all those for sale signs are popping up. And I'm thinking, I would love one of these. Can't get one, but the point is, these people are moving on. They don't necessarily want to do what the grandparents did. And the grandparents have that old money, right? They were railroad tycoons, or they invented the color blue. So what do they value, right? Diversity, equity, the planet, making a positive impact, emotional intelligence. I'm the host and the voice of Allianz's podcast. It's called Rebuilding Retirement. If you have time, check it out. It's really, really good. Not because I'm the host of it, but some of the guests are just phenomenal. All of them are, rather. And one that I spoke to recently, and I'll bring him up again, but his name is Ludovic Sobran, and he is the Chief Economic Officer for Allianz SE, the parent company. And he was talking about this very thing, this emotional intelligence, and how people tie that into their retirement and how they work and what they invest in and what they care about. It wasn't always a thing, right? Just like, what's the biggest return? What's the best return? I'll take more of that. And this is a chief economist saying, I'm tying to these things emotionally. And I'm like, really? You don't care about just the X's and O's? Nope. Their values before return. 62% say it's important for financial professionals to visibly demonstrate a social equality and diversity commitment, right? That number is much, much higher than boomers. There's just difference in generations. One part one of this that is valuable, I will say, is that we break down the difference in the generations, from Gen X to millennials to Gen Z and back to the boomers. Why the boomers felt the way they did. They came home after back-to-back world wars in which they won. They're now 2-0. They're the champs. Confetti is raining down. They're sailors. They're kissing their women in the street. And they're coming home buying like a sick, tricked out station wagon with wood paneling. Life is good. So of course, that's going to set the tone for how they feel moving forward. At the end of their generation, here comes Gen X, and right at the very end, Kennedy is assassinated. And then Martin Luther King is assassinated. And then Bobby Kennedy is assassinated. And things are looking bleak and grim. And then there's an energy crisis. Gen X happens to be the smallest generation. Right? It's just they weren't looking toward the future like, man, everything is bright and great. But then you usher in the millennials and suddenly got a .com thing and a President Bill Clinton's on the Arsenio Hall show playing the saxophone wearing sunglasses, and you're like, happy days are here again, right? And so when you think about their behaviors and their returns and what they think about aligning investments to their values, more important than getting the maximum returns, again, that conversation I had with Ludovic Sobran, it took me aback. I was like, really? You really think about that? He said, sure. He said, if I invested into something and it meant something to me and times got a little chippy, they got a little hard, what do you think I'm going to stray away from first? The thing that really means something to me, or something that's bringing me just marginally a little bit more of a return? I said, no, that makes sense, right? So that's how he's looking at it. He's a relatively young man. At some point in that conversation, during the podcast, I was like, should I have me talking to this guy? He's like that smart. But that's the kind of stuff that means something to them, right? So they want to work for financial professionals with a strong workplace equality, diversity training, which is why that young man sat across from me looking at his phone saying, who are you, right? Who do you purport to be? These kind of things matter to me. Their struggles. Right? 80% merely surviving life. Some of it, again, we talked about that, why they have, the second job. Some of it is that, to guard against that. They're hit hard by job loss, but despite that, they're optimistic. Talk about some of the downturns, right? We talked about the dot-com boom, where there was a dot-com bust, right? And then there's the housing market crash and COVID-19 and all these things. And so you had these people being told that these are once-in-a-generation occurrences. But now they've happened like 3 or 4 times. What does that do to your psyche? What does that do to your approach? Well, one, I can tell you that you're looking at some of the adults in the room and being like, what did you guys do? Right? How did this happen? Why did this happen? What are we doing? How do I build for the future? I don't have the comfort of knowing I'm going to have a pension. You're talking that Social Security might not be here. So what am I going to have to do to ready and steady myself for the future? The downturns. My sister texted me earlier last year. And she said, I think I might be out of a job, LOL. She's a little younger than me. And I'm like, hun, that's nothing to LOL about. I'm in a meeting, TTYL, All right, I'll talk to you later. I'll call you. I call her. I said, what's going on? She said, well, I work at this bank. It's called Silicon Valley Bank. There are those other groans I told you were going to come and the laughter. So I'm glad you guys all have a good attitude about it. She's okay, right? They end up getting bought out. She was fine. She dodged that bullet. But I was a little surprised her reaction. The sky wasn't falling. She wasn't really mad about it. I said, well, what's the deal? What's going on? You okay? She goes, yeah, like I said, I became a saver. I'm sitting on a mountain of cash and I'll figure it out. And I think we're going to get bought out and we're going to be okay. But that's what they've experienced. And so when older people are saying they're cupcakes or snowflakes or whatever derogatory term they want to say, the fact is they're really resilient. They've seen some things, they've been through some things. And despite that, they still have a positive outlook thinking that things are going to get better. They're going to find out a way to forge that. How is that going to happen for them? So I had a sister who was riding a wave, was on top of the world. It all came crashing down. She learned the lesson and bounced back. Their characteristics, they're risk takers, they're confident, and the fear of missing out. Now, when I say risk takers, my sister sent me a video. It was a little sketchy. I'm one of those proud Android users, so it kind of came in pixelated. I didn't know what I was looking at. I felt like I was like in a Liam Neeson movie, like, were you taken? What's going on? I'm trying to put clues together in the background because she's showing me something I'm not really familiar with. And finally, she turns the camera to herself and says, I did it. I bought my place in Paris. What? You bought a place in Paris? She goes, yeah. This is my flat. I bought it in Paris. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. She goes there every year to treat herself for Christmas. She likes bringing in the holidays in Europe because they really do it big in Europe if you don't know. And she wanted to buy a place. And so all that saving she had done, she started to get some advice from a guy. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But she was able to pull the trigger. So they're risk takers and they're confident, almost half of them, that they know more than their parents. Now you can say that's arrogance, ignorance, hubris, whatever. But the reason they feel that way is because they're getting sources of information from everywhere, right? Whereas they think their parents might have got it from the newspaper or the Wall Street Journal. They're looking at it and saying, I'm getting this advice online. I'm talking to other people that are more future-minded about all of these things and what they're going to do. And there is that fear of missing out. If I'm sitting around at work and I'm talking about the weekend I had at the bar, but someone else is saying, hey, I just got into this investment, I'm doing this thing. You're like, oh, should I be doing more? Should I be investing more? Should I be paying attention to this? I have a son. He's very handsome, looks just like me. And he's 15. He has this little app. And I said, buddy, I'm going to start giving you a weekly allowance. This is around about when he's 13. He said, all right, Dad, this kid, light of my life, gives me no trouble, straight A student, really great kid. So I said, all right, we'll get you your allowance, we'll get you going. Well, that first year, I can tell you, that money, as soon as it got into the app, it was gone. He would run to Chipotle and tell everybody, burritos on me. I'm like, son, you got to do better, man. And I didn't want to shame him, but I'm like, you got to do better. Well, fast forward now, and every time I have it, he's like, Dad, just put it into the savings. Like, I have enough to get me through the week. I want to build this. I want to keep going. This is a 15-year-old. He'll still go to Chipotle from time to time. He's a big kid, so he wants to get extra protein and tells them to double up on the chicken and hopes that the cashier is pretty cool and just lets him get by with it. But I can just tell you that they're already thinking about this, and he's already talking about, what to invest. The little app lets him invest in things and do some stuff. That's on his radar. When I was his age, oh my gosh, I was sprinting to Foot Locker to buy a pair of Michael Jordan shoes. I was not thinking about an investment. I was not socking any of it away. That money was gone as quick as it came. So, this is about engagement. We're going to talk about communication and how it is that we want to talk to these people. Now, pretty quickly, you're going to put these names together and realize that, yes, this is the family from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I know. I think we were making this before Will Smith lost his mind and started slapping people in public, but bear with me, because it's a good exercise when you're thinking about how you approach these people. You have Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv, and you can have whichever Aunt Viv you want. If you want the newer one that was light skin or the original one that's dark skin, have any Aunt Viv you want. You have Hillary, you have Carlton, you have Ashley, and then the Will. Will's the nephew. I think he's from West Philadelphia, born and raised. Playground is where he spent most of his days. So this is the Banks family. Now, if you're an advisor, you've helped Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv get to where they are. But now they have these younger folks that are coming up. And they say, hey, can you give them some advice and help too, right? You've already got us where we're going to go. You're going to help us with some, assets and things like that. But we really want to start turning the corner with them so they can figure it out. And they say, cool, can we set up a meeting? It's like, well, we've tried. I put it in an email, but they're not answering that thing. That's just not the way to reach them. Think about your website. When that young man said, hey, you're cool. You're the coolest guy I've ever met. I don't know the exact words. But he said that I was cool, but said my company needed work. Now, if I'm working in Allianz, I'm looking at our intranet. I don't look at our website every day. I don't really give it much thought. But then I looked at the website and I was like, oh yeah, well, I suppose. Who are you trying to reach? Who are you trying to reach? Who is your core audience? What are you putting out into the world that you say, come work with me or I want to work with you? And so when you look at the websites, at Allianz, I did this practice with a group from Carlson School of Management. And they came in and they did a whole inventory and everything that we do, from the language we use when we're putting out applications or job descriptions to our websites, all of these things. And they said, yeah, it's a little stale. Like, you're still talking to an audience from about 10 to 15 years ago. I know you think it looks good, but you have like your blue skies and people that are extras on the movie Cocoon, and they're coming out of the ocean and they're riding bicycles on the boardwalk. And like, if that's what retirement is to you, everyone with silver hair, just know you are really limiting the audience. And you know, that doesn't really occur to you when you're into it on a day-to-day. Well, if you are an advisor, what's your web saying? So they're digital natives. We mentioned that. First thing they're going to do when you said, hey, kids, I want to set up a meeting with an advisor, they're going to say, all right, I'm going to go check that person out. What do we got? Technology, right? Your chatbots, your portals, your digital signatures. I remember when we were moving to digital signatures and people were like, I'm doing a wet signature forever. I was like, oh, well, good luck with that. And now everyone's on board with it. How do you make it easy? How do you eliminate things that just seem to be obstacles in their way? Your why story. Right? That's a very important thing. Why you do this. I started my career at Allianz in suitability. And one thing I can tell you is that in doing suitability, I had to decline not a lot of policies, but I had to decline some. And I really thought it was for the benefit of the client that I said, no, this cannot be sold. But what I can tell you is that I never declined them because I thought that the agent or the rep was being nefarious. They were generally trying to help someone, right? So being in this business, I've never heard people talk about how much they're going to get paid or how much money or whatever product. They truly want to help people. That's their passion, right? So when you have a why story, let people know why that is and why they should work with you. My sister that bought a place in Paris, a guy came to her and was like, hey, they met at the gym. He said, this is what I do. He said, now I know how it is. I actually have a place in Costa Rica. It's not Europe, but it's a place outside of the continental US. And I wanted to have a little retirement shanty, and so I can help you get there. I can help you facilitate a dream. That's all it took. Someone had interest in something she was doing and showed themselves to be credible. Then show you understand their value, right? I say this all the time to people. To understand is not to agree. I understand a lot of things. I don't always agree with them, but I understand them, right? So if they say that something is valuable to them or it's important, try to figure out what that is, and then you echo that back to them. And that shows up again on a website that they're going to go take a look at. 51% take an active interest in financial seminars, compared to only 15% of boomers, right? Especially when you think about a financial seminar, boomers have probably done what they're going to do. They're kind of worried about the accumulation phase or not outliving their money. But as terms of assets and building and accumulation, they're probably there. These guys want to know the tricks of the trade. They want to know what's coming up. Social media. 61% prefer to learn about financial topics and online tools. 73% agree that they put pressure on themselves to constantly improve their financial situation. Videos instead of static photos, humor if it's authentic. Me, I'm hilarious, so I'm going to lead with humor. But if it's authentic and you're hilarious too, join me. No, then you can lead with humor as well. What I would tell you about the authenticity, they just need to know that it's real. They're going to be that kid around the table that looks at their phone and makes sure that you are who you are. In terms of them worrying about the financial situation and wanting to improve it, how could they not? One thing about social media is that you see everyone's highlight reel. I mean, some people will post their bad days, but for the most part, they look like they are crushing it. All right, I'm going to show my age here. How many of you grew up watching Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous? Anybody remember that guy? What was his name? Robin Leach. Yes, you got it. You nailed it. He talked about the champagne wishes and caviar dreams. And I watched that too, but that was like the only show of its kind. It was like pie in the sky. We all knew we weren't really going to have yachts, right? That wasn't a thing. But now you go online, you're like, how is this person in Tulum? Then they just get back from Bali? Like, that guy just bought that car? It's like, you don't know anything about their lives, but if you look online, oh my God, are they killing it? And that does put pressure. Again, we're talking about that emotional side of it that says, what am I doing? Am I falling far behind? Do I not have enough? How do I get what I want to get? Because I can tell you this, as soon as my sister has her place in Paris furnished, I'm going there, and I'm going to make some people jealous. All right, so financial planning goals. We can see that they're unaligned on some things. Some things are closer than others. And for investment and portfolio management, yeah, there's a divide there. Because if you think about portfolio management, you're in the decumulation phase if you're a little bit earlier and you're watching that and you're figuring it out. If you're talking about, portfolio management when you're younger, you don't have much of a portfolio and it's not really, being actively managed on the level that an older person would. Financial planning. Now that's way bigger when you're talking about a younger person. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but really, they need help. They need advice. They need coaching. They need support. A little less with the boomers. They've done most of what they're going to do. And maybe every once in a while they call and say, hey, I'm thinking about taking the family on a trip to Greece. Can we do that? And you say, yeah, that's in the offering. Go ahead. Where they are aligned closely is peace of mind. I think a silly thing actually that's said a lot in corporate and where I reside is, some leader coming out and saying, you know what keeps me up at night? No, I don't. And I don't care. I'd like to know what gets you out of bed in the morning. I'd like to know what motivates you when your feet hit the floor, what your passion is, right? So when you talk about peace of mind, I want someone that's going to instill that in me. That guy gave my sister peace of mind. He said, no, that dream isn't unattainable. It's not even 20 years out. Let me show you how you can do it today or within the next year. And they put together a plan that gave her peace of mind to be that risk taker and pull a trigger on something that was a dream that she thought she was setting up for retirement. Turns out she was closer to that than she knew. Someone gave her peace of mind. That's a human trait. Everyone wants that. If the boomers were like at, 3% with peace of mind, I'm like, geez, tough world. And then achieving goals, right? Boomers, for the most part, you've achieved whatever you want to achieve. Of course, there's still things out there in front of you depending on the age, but with the younger crowd, they want that just a little bit more. Key planning moments, and this is big. They were polled and talked about the top 10 key planning moments, right? What is it that you want to do? What's that important? Not surprisingly, saving for a vacation or other interest. Now, someone might say, oh, you need to be disciplined to start worrying about the future. No worries. Number 2 is saving or investing for retirement, and they're relatively close, right? But they do want to strike a balance between living a life that they're seeing practically everyone else live and then saving. So as I'm looking at these key retirement moments, right, and if I'm an advisor, I'm saying, what's important to you and how can I help you get there? I was parking my car at the airport and I pulled up next to a Jeep Grand Wagoneer. And I was like, oh, what a good looking car. Like I remember this thing back in the day. It was like, had wood paneling. It was really big and boxy and it wasn't ugly, but it was an acquired taste. But now this new one looks like a spaceship. That's pretty cool. So out of curiosity, I Googled, does anybody know what the top Jeep Grand Wagoneer costs? What did you say? 120, unless you've seen something I didn't, maybe. But oh, yeah, well, then I stand corrected, even more expensive, like 160. Can you believe that? For a Jeep, that rhymes with cheap, but it's anything but. And I'm like, for a Jeep? Unreal. Like, but that's the cost of entry if you want to live it. And we're not talking about a Range Rover, we're not talking about a Porsche, I'm talking about a Jeep here. A Jeep. And then you couple that with putting a couple of kids in daycare. If you have them, you know how much that costs, how expensive that is. Then you talk about the loans that you may be paying off for being a student. And then you think about your mortgage. So these young people that people like to think are just sitting in basements licking Dorito dust off their fingertips, they have like the equivalent of 4 mortgages just to live a life. To be in this world in which they tell us we're the most prosperous and the successful country in the history of the world. And they're like, well, where's my piece? Because man, this looks and feels expensive. So they want to pay down debt. They want to buy a car, maybe not one for 160, but something nice, right? Then they think about the healthcare expenses and all that. So create messages around those items. Like the guy with my sister, how can I help you facilitate a dream? If it's important to you, it's important to me, right? And it helps if you had an uncle that passed away in Inglewood and left your house that's now worth $1.3 million. But if you don't have that, what else can I do to help you, right? Keeping in mind, those fictional characters we're talking about from the Fresh Prince. You already took care of the parents. One thing that is stated in portion 1 of this, level 1, is the fact that young people will leave their parents' advisors when they're done. Anybody know the percentage? Want to just throw out a number? 80. 80% will say, sayonara, won't see you tomorrow, I'm out. They'll show up at a funeral, that'll be the next time they see them, it'll be the first time they see them, it'll be the last time they see them. We talked about women earlier. 70% of them are the ones that are facilitating divorce. They're like, I'm good. So if you were meeting with a couple and you just treated their wife as an extension of the husband, not knowing that she's a mover and a shaker and a baller, well, now you're out that client too. So when you think about these sorts of things, right, creating messages around what it is that's important to them, knowing the landscape. Now, this is important because I just like to know where you give your information. I've had people come up to me at conferences and say, annuities are the worst. I'm like, well, where'd you hear that? Susan. I'm like, well, who's Susan? I don't, and then they tell me because they heard something about a product that was designed 30 years ago. And I'm like, well, I'll try to combat that here and now, but where are you getting information? Whoever you are, I'd like to know where you're getting your information. When that kid looked me up and he decided that he was going to check me out, you know where he checked me out on? LinkedIn. I don't really have a ton of social media. I had left Instagram a few years ago. LinkedIn is in dead last. It's even behind Facebook, that app where you go to find out that your uncle has some weird views, right? So now I'm being looked up on LinkedIn. So if I want to reach the guy who's a man who's 40, these younger millennials or Gen Zs, LinkedIn ain't gonna be enough because that's not where they're looking. Where are they looking? Reddit, TikTok. If you think that TikTok is just for silly dances and trends, you are sorely mistaken. People will come up to me with so much information, advice, and all these kind of other things. Where'd you learn that? It's like TikTok University. Because they saw something, they dug a little bit deeper into it, they did their own research, whatever the case is, but it's something that put it on their radar, and then they started feeling that, and that became important to them. Same thing with Reddit and YouTube. YouTube will have you believing you can do anything. I'm not a mechanic, but if I look at a YouTube video long enough, I gotta tell you, probably work for NASCAR. So when you think about it, 79% of those millennials have gotten advice from social media. Almost 70% get it every week, a quarter of them every day. So they're seeing it. It's already on their radar. Again, I have a 15-year-old who's withholding on the Chipotle because he wants to do better with finances. It is on their radar. So your social media approach, what should that be? Your values, right? Can't be value-based without including inclusivity. People want to be included. They want to know that they've got not only just invited to the party, but they were asked to dance, right? So choose one aspect of that and then go deep. I was in a diversity think tank down in Florida like a couple of years ago. There was a gentleman, the CEO of a company, who was doing phenomenally well, wanted to do better, wanted to figure out how he could do better. He opened up a summer internship program. Had some pretty good feedback, got some people, but one person, a young lady, Hispanic, changed his world, and his words transformed his business because she was good at something he wasn't. She didn't have a financial background, but she was a guru when it came to social media. I mean, what young person isn't? But she was especially good and was like, hey, you should part your hair on the other side, maybe change out that blazer. Let's take a look at that website. What's your social media presence look like? This guy was in the community. He was always doing things, but he was a modest man, didn't want to post it. She goes, oh, no. If you're doing this, show people you're doing it. There's no problem with telling people your values. He had that same program the next year for the summer internship. He got 8,300 applicants, more obviously than he could possibly deal with. But he had an influx of talent for people that knew something that he didn't. Teach yourself. Don't rely on members of the community to hold your hand, right? I was on a panel discussion last year, and we were talking about diversity, and Ann came up to me and said, man, that was good. I really feel bad. I want to do more diversity. It's just, there's no diversity where I am. I said, well, sir, that's just silly. Where are you from? He said, Fargo, North Dakota. And I was like, well, okay. Hold on. Real quick, do you have any veterans in Fargo? He said, well, yeah, some veterans. I said, cool. Any young people? He goes, yeah, a couple. I said, all right, cool. Have studies shown that there are, in fact, women that live in Fargo? He goes, yeah, several. I said, okay, cool. Don't look now, but you have diversity, right? If you're looking diversity very narrowly, looking at it and saying, well, I don't know anyone with the last name Rodriguez, then sure, in Fargo, you're going to run into trouble. But even, and this is the beauty of this conference that's so amazing, when I peeked in those doors and saw the speed round dating type thing, that is so cool. Such a cool concept. Think about how many ideas, how many people, how many different companies, lines of business that you can get simply by talking to someone. That is diversity. People from different parts of the country, again, different lines of business, all of it. And he thought he didn't have any because he didn't see anyone in this town that looked like me. Handsome. And tanned. Become involved, so many options, invest time, money, and all that. Again, there's a lot of people that do a lot of good work, but it would never occur to them to put it out there, right? And say, hey, this is what I am. This is where I give charity. This is all the things that I do, right? So if it's something you do, wear that. Show that. People want to see that. They want to see another human side of you. And then your personal business and brands, right? When choosing a service, NextGens pick people more than business, so get personal. They want to know who you are. It's kind of like me. You can tell me the what all day. I need to know the why. So when I talk to people, I want to know, who are you? What's your why? Why should I care? Right? Because otherwise, I guess I could probably just go to robo-advisor. You know, the guy that met my sister is like, look, I've been where you've been. This is not new. I do this. Let me help you do it too. So if you are invited, you know, proactive, create an event on social, text your invitation. Again, the young Banks family, maybe that stuff was in an email and they're like, dad, auntie, uncle, I never even saw it. So text it, put it on social, create something. I threw a conference last year for Allianz Life, built it up and got photographers in there and got videography and did all these things. And then these people were like, man, that's good, because they all want to be a part of something. They all want to be a part of something. I mean, if you went to a concert and you were in the nosebleed section, you're still going to take a video of that big screen and show, yeah, I went to go see Usher or Garth Brooks. So create service they can't resist. I would argue you probably already have that. You just have to amplify it, promote it, get it out there. Real quick about the small accounts. It's kind of the same idea with my kid that has something. It gives him some skin in the game. He feels like he's doing something. So if you have the nephew Will, who's prone to violence apparently at award shows, or Carlton and Hillary and Ashley of the Banks family, and you say, hey, I'm already doing this for your parents. I know they can give you a little bit of, we'll call it play money, but let's start a small account. This is a service I'll do for free, just to like get you guys acclimated to it and feel like you're actually participating in it. So the ease of opening it, the parent, the family member, obtain money to invest. If you can do that, right, and figure out which services you can provide that are free or a little stress to you, figure it out and pull them in. And then customize their purpose. Maybe Ashley finds investing enjoyable. Maybe Hillary and Will, maybe they're invest in businesses that take a public stance on certain issues. And Carlton, maybe he's just saying, I want to consolidate more assets with a primary financial professional. Whatever it is, again, customize it to them and find their purpose and say, hey, I'm speaking to you. Same thing I said when you're looking at a website or how you show up online. Who is the audience? Who are you actually intending to receive? Even when I build a presentation, someone says, well, okay, what are we trying to get at? What do we want out of this, right? Like, how are you going to generate excitement? How are you going to get people, invested and pulled in, right? John F. Kennedy didn't go out there and say, we're going to build a pretty competitive space program and hopefully we can compete with the Russians. It'll be pretty cool by the end of this decade. No, he said, we're going to send a man to the moon, right? That caught people's attention. That's what they wanted. He stated the goal, said, that is my stated purpose. This is what we're going to do. And by the end of that decade, lo and behold, we did it, right? So whatever it is that you're building, whatever it is you're putting out there, customize it, speak to them, know the audience. What can you do? 85% would like some form of behavioral coaching from their advisors to keep them from making mistakes, procrastinating, or making rash decisions. I think that's the biggest part of it, right? We all, whatever the goal is, you want to get more fit, it would help you to have a trainer. You want to do some home improvement projects, it would help you to have somebody at Lowe's or Home Depot in an orange apron give you some advice and some tips on how to do it. And yeah, you could go to YouTube, but it helps if someone's there holding you accountable. Well, this is no different. When the guy told my sister, I can help you get to Paris, he didn't say, sit back and relax, I'll take it from here. He's like, no, let's work in concert with each other. Let me tell you some things you're going to have to do. And then it made sense why she was acting poor for a calendar year. I'd invite her out for things. She's like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to make that. Or, her boyfriend picked up an extra job and all kind of stuff. I'm like, what is going on? Well, she stayed disciplined. She stayed on track. Someone helped her with something to get where she wanted to go. So why financial coaching? 46% of Gen Z and Gen Y report that they're being stressed and anxious almost all the time with finances, both long and short term. Again, we talk about them side hustling and trying to make more money. 52% of Gen Z and 49% of millennials report feeling burned out due to the demands of their jobs at the workplace. A lot of that emotional intelligence we talked about plays into that. They may have an overbearing boss who's straight out of the 50s who thinks their work is just this, and they're like, not anymore, and this is actually bringing a lot of stress on me. 51% of millennials, Gen Z, say that social media makes them want to buy things they can't afford. I get it. That's not something that's unique to young people. I see stuff online all the time and start punching in my credit card. And then they're like, what are the last 3 digits? And I'm like, oh, I don't know those. And then that stops me from buying it. See, I'm disciplined. I'm kidding. The card was just out of my reach. Otherwise, I'd be doing it too, which is why you need someone to help. And then mental health, right? You pull back from that because you think, well, I'm not a therapist. What do they mean mental health? But like Ludovic Sabran talked about, on the podcast, a lot of it is tied into that, right? Think about how you feel if you're not as far ahead. When I started off in suitability and there were folks that maybe didn't have as much liquidity as they thought they should have, or they're only putting a little bit of premium into this particular product, they felt some kind of way. Like they should be doing more, they should be further ahead. Why are they behind? Why is that other person on a boat or has a cabin? Where did I go wrong, right? That's all that plays into it. And then avoiding destructive habits. That's what a financial professional, financial advisor can do, especially for a young person. So really quickly talk about education and the basics, right? The science behind diversification, correlation, passive versus active investing, cost structures. Again, lean into your experience. You're the one that knows. Give them these tutorials, these basics. I can also tell you that everywhere we go, people talk more and more about financial literacy. Well, you guys are the brain trust. You're the ones that know. They're relying on you. If you talk about the competition, I briefly mentioned robo-advisors. You don't have to denigrate them, but I will say if you're talking about the drawbacks, they can help improve a client behavior, right? I've tried to get fit using a fitness app, and when I didn't want to do it that day, I just took the phone and turned it face down. Problem solved. But if I had a guy who was, crazy and hopped up off some sort of green juice, like, fine, I'm coming, I'll be right down to them, right? A little harder to avoid. So they can help you with your habits, tailor clients' needs, increase financial wellness, reduce that stress. The key planning moments. I want to draw your attention to the 401k basics really quickly. Don't discount the fact that a lot of these people might be working in a corporation for the first time, right? And having a 401k that they didn't have before. My family grew up in the South. They're from Louisiana. They worked with their hands. Me and my sisters were really the first ones to get into corporate. No one in my family could say, oh, this is what you want to do with 401k. You want to max this? They didn't know about matching or anything else like that. Or they'd say, well, you know what? Life is so tough. I need as much as my paycheck as possible. I'm not going to put into that or not so much into that, right? But if you have some sort of coaching and say, oh, what's your company match? That's actually pretty good. You should be taking advantage of that. Explain how that works out. What are the fee structures? All these sorts of things that they just do not know sometimes. And then improve trust. I will say this. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. A lot of things have been done by a lot of people. You can say, well, I'm not unscrupulous, or I didn't do anything, or not even in our industry. But if someone is around your age or comes in, I don't know what they call them, finance bros, looking a certain way, or maybe someone watched The Wolf of Wall Street, and then they develop these ideas of what they think this industry is. That's not your fault, but it is your problem. We do have to solve that. So when you talk about the trust gap, it's real. They see generations that went before them that, frankly, dropped the ball a little bit. And so they look at it and say, well, I don't know. I don't know if I can trust you. I saw a CEO last year holding a meeting, and she told her team, everyone gave the feedback about their bonus. Don't worry about your bonuses. I had a boss that told me you can visit Pity City, but you can't live there for too long. Worry about how we're going to get the $24 million we need to have a successful year. And I mean, you can just see all the eye rolls on this Zoom call. And here she is with silver hair and tortoiseshell glasses, looking like the poster child of a generation gone by, and not knowing she's just losing the room. But she thought she had a mic drop moment. Someone that shows up online, it went viral. Someone sees that and they think they're all like that. Now, that's unfair, but people are going to paint with a wide brush. Again, not your fault, but it is your problem. I won't dive too deep on this. I'll just really quickly say that if you have knowledge in these areas, and again, talking about what the interest is to them, then be able to have a conversation or at least steer them to someone who does know about it, right? Someone was asking me about that gal that just had some sort of, I don't know what kind of coin it was that went belly up the other day, and now everyone's in trouble and talking about fraud, and is she going to be able to escape prison? And I'm like, I'm kind of like Warren Buffett on these things, and that I don't know. I think money is money, and I don't really know about that. But again, to understand doesn't mean that you disagree. I don't know about it, but if someone else does and it's important to them, then try to figure it out. How can you have that conversation around these sorts of things? And then after you're done with all that with these Banks kids, hold a quick meeting, right? Say, hey, this is what I do for your parents. This is the services I offer. This is what I can do for you. And then follow it up with a call that's free and confidential where they can tell you, hey, this is what I want to do. I actually want to leave this family and move to Costa Rica. Can you help me? Create the events. I told you about the conference that I built last year. Now, I had the benefit of having it at Allianz Field, which was really, really cool. Not everyone has that. But if you have something cool in here and you can do it, just show people that you're active, you're having fun, you're doing your thing. There is that fear of missing out. If they look like something is happening, they want to be a part of that. Hire a photographer. When I had my event, I said I need a photographer, videographer. And the people that were helping organize said, well, everyone has an iPhone. You don't need that. I said, well, you do. And then they all asked me for the images and the video afterwards because you desperately needed it. All right, I'm actually going to skip this part for the sake of time, and also I don't think it really lends to the presentation much, and I want to get into, just real quick, go over that one more time with helping them avoid procrastination, rash decisions, and mistakes. 85% would like coaching to avoid those mistakes. That's where you guys come into play, right? You just know things that they don't know. You've experienced things. Can you help them facilitate a dream? And then we'll land this plane here. Longevity. I don't know how long any of you have been in this business. I'm sure a lot of you a long time, some of you short. However amount of time you've been here, you know more than the people that aren't inside of it, and you can help. You got to lean on that. Your values. What are you passionate about? Go ask somebody what they're passionate about. I'm telling you, they're going to have trouble with it. People just don't think about it. I ask people that all the time. What are you passionate about? But then I do this dirty little trick. I say, but you can't say family. Because that's like asking somebody, hey, rate yourself from 1 to 10, but you can't use 7. Well, no one's going to say they're a 6, but then they don't want to say they're an 8. Me, I say 9.5. But if you say, don't say family, what are you passionate about? You're going to run into people like, ooh, whatever you're passionate about, if it is helping people, that should show up. Show them that that's what you're passionate about. Agility, adapt to the changes of technology, all of that. I'm not going to go deep on that one. We know we can't be dinosaurs. DEI. Issues and inclusion are more personal than political. It's true, right? When you talk about diversity, you guys had that in the room with the speed dating. They're different companies, different ages, different genders, different product lines, different everything. Tyler Perry movies, stay with me here. I've never watched one because I don't need to eat the whole apple to know that it's rotten. But what I will tell you is this, by critics and audiences alike, they're always panned. I'm like, well, why would that be? He has a studio. He's really successful. He's a billionaire. The films look like they're films. They have good videography, and the art direction on them is pretty good. They're good actors and actresses. So what's the problem there? The writer's room. You know how many writers are in Tyler Perry's writer's room? There's one. It's Tyler Perry. He says, I go off to the mountains and I get in a cabin and I just write these, and people wonder how I can hammer out 70 scripts. I'll tell you how, because they're bad. Because you have no diversity of thought. Now you can say, well, he has diversity. It's the diversity that people from Fargo, North Dakota were talking about. Sure, you see plenty of faces and ages and races, everything else. But when there was diversity of thought, whatever it is, ego, hubris, whatever, he did not allow another voice in the room. And because of that, that product looks the same every single time. That's all diversity is. Equity, we want equitable inclusions. People want things to be fair. Everyone wants that. Right? And that chart where we said that they wanted, peace of mind and, they want to sleep at night. Everybody wants that. Boomers and the Gen Zs and millennials, they were aligned on that. They want peace of mind. And inclusion, again, if you invite me to the barbecue, can I bring a dish? Like, I want to be included. I want to be involved. Then you're firm. Look, inevitably, sometimes bad news comes up and it's attached to your firm and you have to find yourself out there defending it. That's going to be the case. But I would say, present yourself as kind of an outsider, not, the typical. I don't know if you ever flashed a 10 or 5. Oh, you're giving me a high 5 virtual? Thank you. Oh, 5 minutes. Gotcha. Who are you when you're not at work? Now, some people say this thing, if I want to bring my whole self to work, I don't. You saw how I came in the other day. I was in sweatpants and a hoodie. That's not typically how I would show up to work. So I'd advise against that. But I would say that there shouldn't be a huge divide between who you are when you're not at work and who you are when you show up. If I'm charitable, if I have a good heart, if I give to people, that's going to show up. If I care about your future, right, and what it is that you do and how I can help you with that, that's going to show up, right? It's not going to be a case of saying, well, man, I met that guy outside of the office and a completely different person, right? But if that is the case, and you have a young person sitting across from you like he did me and looks on a phone, it should track. It should align. They shouldn't say, this guy's phony. Like, online. Look at him holding this kitten. I'm like, but I do love kittens. I can never finish a whole one though. So here we are, summary, how to most effectively communicate and attract prospects online, understanding their tech needs. We talked about your websites and how to get on social media, where they are looking, where they are not looking, LinkedIn, and then how to deepen your relationships with these next gen, right? Speak their language, talk about things that are important to them, and then make sure that when you're doing that, that's showing up. So whatever they're saying, they're like, hey, this person gets it. And then what's one technique that you'll learn here today that you can immediately implement into your practice? Folks, that is the presentation. I hope it was more of a conversation. My name's Travis Walker. I'm a professional talker. That's it. If you have any questions, you can fire them away, but I think we were pretty thorough. Oh my God. No, go ahead. No, he was giving me a virtual high five too. No, what's your question? She's going to throw you a microphone. Can you catch? Oh no, she's going to bring it to you. Even better.
Thank you so much. This was an amazing presentation.
Thank you.
One question I had is, what do you think the impacts on, pushback on DEI? You have the Dismantle DEI Act, which is likely going to become legislation. If there's a Title VII to the Civil Rights Act challenge, it will likely, for private sector employers, it's going to not be allowed to take into consideration race or gender. So what impact in the next 4 years do you see of policy reshaping this discussion?
Sure.
Thank you.
I think that's an excellent question, and thank you for it. What I would say to that is you can't legislate feeling, right? You can make whatever law you want to make. I've had things that have happened in companies, and they've come out saying, this will not stand. Going forward, we're going to do this, this, and that, and they make a rule. But the fact is, people did that, and they did that because they felt that, right? And so if you're like our chief economist, who, by the way, in our conversation said, yeah, me and my husband do X, Y, Z. I'm like, oh, so you're in the same, good for you, right? That was he's like, look, this is my life. This is my generation coming up. So if you notice where the pushback is coming from and why it's coming, it's like, I understand it. It's something that can be weaponized. It's a good political football for people who want to use it for that, right? But like the guy from Fargo, you look around, it's happening whether you want to legislate it out or not. Like, you're going to have people that are running companies and they're women. You're going to have young people that are doing some investing. You're going to have people like me that are in front of a room with diversity in his job title that's just having a conversation. So you can demonize it and make it the boogeyman, but the fact is, I leave that to them. I think people know. I especially think the young people know, and it is their generation. So good luck telling them it's not very important. It's, I think, would come back to bite you, but excellent question. I appreciate that. Yes.
Do you have any data or any thoughts around the fire community? I think it's been fire early.
Yeah, we do. And what I can get into your hands, I didn't bring it here because I didn't like to, save some trees, but we do have a 1-pager, 2-pager of this with a lot of data covering this, the generations, the money, all of that. We're even developing more when you talk about like Henry's, right? The high earning, not rich yet, all kinds of things like that. Yeah, that's why this is a level 2. We want to get to a level 3, still need to have that conversation. We do have it, and we all have badges. By the way, these are the coolest badges that I've been to, and I've been going to conferences for over 10, 15 years, so thank you so much. We'll get your name off your badge that's the size of a billboard, and we'll make sure that we get something in your hands.